Welcome to my podcast, and thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm delighted to be sitting in a room here at Highclere with my guest, Matthew Edley, but always known as Ted, so he's Ted. Thank you so much for joining me. You might well recognise Ted because he is graced with the most wonderful red Mohican. And I think that has been one of your kind of bylines, hasn't it, on TV presenting as well?
Once a punk rocker, always a punk rocker. Kind of, you're a punk rocker for life. As here I am still, in a slightly puddled, middle-aged, and still sporting the stupid haircut.
But I've met Ted, in fact, through my number 3 sister, Lucy, because Ted is a master craftsman and absolutely brilliant in terms of metalworking and many other repair jobs. But we have so many candelabra, and not a single one of them was actually straight. And they were on beautiful sculptures, they were on ceramics. They're throughout the castle. If you look at Downton Abbey on TV, you'll find all our candelabra there. And they were a little bit wonky, but no longer, because Ted has woven his magic bit by bit. I don't know, where did you begin, Ted?
I think I actually started in the library because one of the lamps on one side of the fireplace was missing a lin. And I think Lucy showed me around, and the more we looked, the more that we could see every single lamp we touched. They were loose, they were, like, as you said, they were wonky. And it's a real nice insight into the history of the castle, because each lamp is then presenting its own new set of challenges, and each one's been repaired slightly differently. You got different ways that they've been put together. And it's more a case of when originally they're all candelabras, so they would have all had candles in. When they've been converted to electric lights, what a lot of them had is they literally had a piece of wood wedged in the top and then a light fitting screwed into that. Some of them have had like the pieces of rubber cut in and then the light fitting screwed into that also. But what happened over time, they've been knocked, rubber's gone hard and decayed. They've been cleaned and everything works loose. Some of the lamps themselves, the actual fittings, the threads have stripped. Every time I approach the next one, it's, oh, what am I going to find this time? And it's always a bit of an adventure, but it's good. It's a real sense of pride when I stand back from one particular lamp and that I started and everything was completely wonky and they're all over the place. To stand back and say, oh, actually, yeah, they're all straight. It does give you a bit of a buzz, actually, that kind of stuff.
It's both, I think, really important in terms of fire, health and safety from my point of view as a curator, if you like, and equally well for the beauty, because some of these lamps and the lamp bases are completely exquisite, and you have been a wonder with how you've begun to repair them and then prepare them in a sense to step forwards once more as something of great beauty.
This isn't a restoration, this is more of a conservation, because there's this very fine line. I mean, each one of the lamps, we could have completely dismantled them, cleaned them back, made them absolutely pop and be spotlessly clean. It would have looked out of place in the rest of the castle. They're wearing their age.
I'm wearing my age. They fit with me.
Interestingly, it's the gentleman's smoking room.
Yes.
They're completely black. They're so completely black. Obviously, where you had all the gentlemen in there smoking their cigars throughout the ages. When you're repairing these things, you have to be really sympathetic to the object, but not only to the object, but to the surroundings, what the object is sitting in. If they were all polished up and all made and all shiny, everything else would suddenly look out of place. You have to always approach this kind of work and these kind of jobs in a way of respect for the item, respect also for the surroundings in which it's sitting. It's quite a difficult balancing act. You can't just start throwing loads of modern materials and modern glues and everything at it. So every time I'm doing a repair, I'm soldering it using some silver solder as well as normal sort of soft salt. So you're repairing it using a traditional technique. So every time I have to make a new, say, mountain disc or something, it's always made with brass. I could even use steel, but back in the day, they would have used a piece of brass or a piece of bronze. So use the traditional materials, using the traditional methods. And when somebody would come to it, hopefully in 100, 200, 300 years' time, they'll see what I've done and it won't look out of place. It's completely in keeping with how the light would have been maybe converted or worked on back in the day.
I suppose my approach to the lamps first of all was to put some lampshades on, which seems a little kind of ephemeral and inconsequential. But at that time, I really didn't know where to turn in order to ask someone to repair them. The whole castle asks so many questions, and it gives me an awful lot of problems to solve. But it's interesting because it asks you to solve those problems. There's no one else to turn to. And it's been an extraordinary journey for me as you try to put it back so it's somewhere.
I've enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, it's incredibly taxing, I would imagine. Is it something you've really relished doing?
I have really relished it. I think I've now got a much better little black book of people to turn to, Ted. And my sister Lucy has been extraordinary in terms of the people she's come across in order to help make the inside look even more beautiful. Mm-hmm. Whereas to start with, obviously, George and I were focusing in 2003 on the roof over the saloon. And then we did a huge amount of roof on the front half of the castle. Then I've done the lead roof at the back part of the castle. And as in, if the front looks south, faces the weather, then the back part, which is actually over the front door, which is the front, of course. But in terms of my roof map, it goes another way round. And however boring it is, that's where we had to start.
Oh, yeah, because there's no point repairing anything on the inside.
No.
You've got water cascading here.
No. And it is a huge lesson. And sometimes I think I've got calmer as it comes in because I usually know more now what's caused it and where to go in the first instance. And so it's less of a panic stations and more of crisis management, which is only what you gain with experience. But what's exciting for me is I think I've walked past the red stairs for at least 2 decades, or a bit more than that now, and looked at that winky wonky light.
I think some of them were actually at 45 degrees instead of being upright. And that was quite a challenge because we had to put scaffolding up to get to it, and I'm not good with heights. It's even though it was quite a big platform, I could feel my knees being slightly wobbly. But anyway, we got it done. But yeah, they were a definite challenge, and actually probably one of the ones I think the ones in the two in the dining room. They're probably the ones I stand back and think, yeah, these are the ones I'm most proud of, because the dining room ones are a bit at the stage as well, weren't they? The big ones in front of the mirror.
Ted, you're famous here for all the most amazing work you've done, but you're also famous in the wider world in Britain for your role as a repair guru on television. How often is the programme made that you're part of?
Well, I'm actually involved with is as part of the Salvage Hunters series. And they've got a spin-off called The Restorers, and I'm one of the restorers on there. They usually film their series over the course of the year, and then it's broadcast the following year.
I think for me, it showcased the value of craftsmanship and restoration and care and time.
Everybody on the programme is absolutely fantastic. But I mean, they're the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there are so many really good, skillful people out there. We do have a wealth of it in this country. There's always going to be the problem of getting the younger people interested, because it can be mind-numbingly boring, constantly cleaning or having to make all mundane tasks. Not all of the tasks are like that, of course. We do have a very sort of strong tradition, craftsman. There's Steve, who's a woodworker. I think he did the ladder that's in the library.
Yes.
And Steve's absolutely amazing.
Just repairing the library ladder, which I had found upstairs and realised I didn't have a ladder, so I was standing on chairs. And the library ladder was in the bedroom on the top floor. So that came down and then was sent off to be restored.
That's right, yeah.
And it's come back looking immaculate. It's now wonderfully propped in the library. Quite exciting.
He's amazing. He will always use traditional techniques. He won't use any kind of modern machines or anything. And he even keeps boxes of rusty nuts and bolts and rusty screws, so that if he needs to put something in, there's just the right shade of rust, he'll rummage until he finds one instead of putting something or shockingly in there. So it's a good master.
How did you get into television to start with? How were you picked to go on the Salvage Hunters?
I was just working for myself, and I was doing sort of a lot of restoration work, and I do quite a bit of sculptural work as well. I just had a message out of the blue saying they wanted me as a guest restorer. There was another spin-off of the programme called Classic Cars. They wanted me to make a dashboard for it was a NG TD. It's a post-war MG, but it looks like a pre-war MG. So I made this dash, didn't think anything more of it. And it was about 6 months later, I suddenly had a phone call saying, oh, yeah, we've seen the reels that you did. We got the program from Restorers. Would you like to be involved with that? And I said, yeah, all right. And that's it. I was in 4 series later. And that was that.
How amazing. So it sounds like you can turn your hand to most things and most materials, but you're primarily working with metal.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Well, do you know, it's so much of it is transferable skills. If you've got someone who's a really good woodworker, they've already got the marking out, they've already got the measuring, they've already got a lot of the base skills which go across the board. Even whether it comes to upholstery or whatever material it is, there are certain skills that are transferable to all disciplines. And it's funny because I worked for a coach builders years ago, and we used to do mainly pre-war cars. So we would get the bare chassis come in, and we would then have to make all the panel work for them. And what happened was that we had a lot of antique dealers were coming to us, and we were having to repair the antiques. But the thing is, if you're making something for a pre-war motor car, it's no different to making a lamp to go on a sideboard somewhere, or an extractor hood to go over a cooker. All the disciplines are exactly the same. It's just picking your set of tools up and taking it away from the car and going and doing a lamp or a bathtub or whatever it may be. So it's the transferable skills. I think that I was very lucky that the fellow who I worked for and we learned so much from, he was taught in the traditional techniques, which he, and as me and another fellow, he passed on to us. He's a big tip of an iceberg, really. But we learned so much. And it's funny because I still see him to this day, and I would just say, it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
Yes.
But he just laughs.
But it's very good. If I know about your sculpture, and I've been perusing your website about that, and I have an idea of something I'd like to ask you to make for Geordie and I out in the garden. So I know exactly where it is, and I can't wait to show you. I'm quite excited. I suddenly had a brainwave, which I thought was quite fun.
Was this brainwave at about 4 o'clock in the morning when you were lying awake?
I'd been walking through this particular part of the garden, and there used to at some point be sculpture, be statues and other things like that, and there was nothing when George and I took over. However, excepting one immense statue of Charlemagne, which I think was so big, nobody could move it to sell it for anything. And a lot was sold after World War II. It's not a criticism, it's merely an observation.
Was that purely for fun then?
It was. It was a reason. It was for survival reasons.
Yeah, cool.
And it wasn't done with any joy, but out of necessity. Again, every time is different. However, we have put back a few either sculptural arches, or obviously the statue of the Green Man carved from a living tree. I love working with wood. As you come up.
That's fine. I haven't noticed it until yesterday morning when I was driving in. I was like, the thing is, I was driving up to it, I thought it'd be great if it had a face carved into it. Just, that's the first. Oh, that's really good.
It's delightful. I thought of that particular sculpture because Gerald Dickens had just been performing his great-grandfather's play, A Christmas Carol. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Green Man is one of the legendary figures in our cathedrals, or connected with the Druids and the oak knowers of the past. And I suddenly thought I really relished the connection we have between the land and the wood. And I thought he would look rather wonderful there. And then I got in a cherry pickup so that he could make the leaves for me down the face. And there's a great wood sculptor called Simon O'Rourke, so I'm hugely grateful to him. And I've got another idea for him elsewhere. But going through the garden, there's a path which winds round, and I've been turning it round in my head between wood and metal, and I think it'd be a really lovely place to have a metal sculpture through which we walk.
Yep.
So that's what I wanted to share with you, which I think would be quite fun, actually. So when the weather's a little bit less inclement, we could take a walk. I'd value your ideas immensely, but it'd be lovely to have something of Ted outside as well as all your work inside.
Is that strange thing by artwork and the sculpture? The whole thing with doing repair and restoration work is to make it look like no one's been near it. Obviously, lines are straight, but to all intents and purposes, somebody would see nothing's happened to that because they haven't got the before and the after. With the artwork, you always get, or the sculptural work, you always get the gratification of people saying, oh, you made that. Whereas with the restoration, yes, they know the before and after of the objects. It's not a problem. It's just the way it is.
It is funny. Curiously enough, when I've decorated this room, but you wouldn't know I'd done that, because I hope you might think it had always been like this.
Do you know what? I think this was the first room when I first came and met with Lucy. We came in here and had lunch. And yeah, it was just, oh, well, this has obviously always been like this.
And it's the same with many of the other rooms and bedrooms in the castle. And I'm writing about English country style at the moment, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, just lightly and just thinking about it. And nobody would probably know how much I've done, but you're aware of it in terms of the atmosphere after it. And that word atmosphere is quite hard to describe. And it's the small details and the totality which make the atmosphere, which either makes something welcoming and work or not, which is fascinating.
It's the thing that's really struck me in my time being here is actually how welcoming it is, particularly the staff are all great. You've got a really good crew of people and they all have as much respect for the house as everybody else. So it's just very warm and very welcoming, and it's an absolute pleasure to come here.
I'm really glad and you're very kind. And also you accept it because it is quite often a little bit chaotic. There's some problems. And we can't quite keep up with ourselves. But I also think back and think in the past, there would have been 25 electricians. There were, in fact. There were all these departments with different people. The house is the same blooming size, and it's just each department is usually 2 or 3 people thick.
Yeah.
And that's and I look around and think, oh, well, how am I going to do? But this house, this home, this history, this heritage teaches me so much, Ted. And it's lovely when I find wonderful craftsmen such as yourself to bring in. Then I learn from you, and we all learn from each other. And together, the teamwork of everybody then takes it forward again. But it's great. And I know you've got more work to do in the library, drawing the web. You got
a little bit more of the library. Yeah. And is it...
Oh, the gallery. Even on the gallery. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I nearly started those today, but I thought, no, I'm not going to start it now because I'm just going to run out of time. So it was, so when I come back, then it will be gallery time.
Which should be great.
Around. And,
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and I need to... Then I'm going to see Lucy also about a couple of other little bits I'm not too sure about. One of what she wants me to do. You'd hope that you repairs it, but you just didn't forget. I don't have to go back to that anymore. We could leave that and
move on. I often think that I'm trying to do and have each part that I'm trying to help prepare done well. So I'm not doing it for another 80 years, and I certainly won't be here then. But I'm hoping it's got a good sense of longevity and it's really well done, because this house was really well built. So it's extraordinary. Ted, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you on television on both the re-records and the new series of Salvage Hunters and other programs which you will be on. I hope you'll let me know in advance of all of them. And perhaps I can ring in and ask them to on Western. I wish I could. You've been great. But thank you so much for all you're doing here. You've made the most immense difference. And it's been beautiful to observe the detail with what you've done. Thank you.